the story goes that when the Lubavitcher Rebbe was in Varsha, in Warsaw, and they were trying to escape from the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, and they ended up with a group of people that on the surface seemed of those of a caliber that were not so involved in Torah and mitzvahs. Yet, when there was an explosion next door or very close by, in unison, all of the Yidden cried out Shema Yisrael at the same time, because this idea of Torah that gives them the power of Mesiras Nefesh. Okay, this week's Parsha is Parshas Chukas. Today is Gimel Tammuz, the yahrzeit of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. We're going to learn something from the Rebbe on the Parsha, from Likkutei Sichos. It begins b'midrashei Chazal akshurim l'Parshas Hashavua, in the midrashim that are connected to this week's Parsha, Parshas Chukas. Misupar, we are told she'ananei hakavod hayu b'zchusei shel Aaron, that the ananei hakavod that shielded the Yidden when they were in the Midbar is through the merit of Aaron. Habe'er, the water, b'zchus Miriam. V'haman hoisa b'zchus Moshe, and the man that the Yidden sustained themselves with while traveling in the Midbar was because it was in the merit of Moshe. Kisha Aaron and Miriam nistalku, when Aaron and Miriam passed away, nitlu ananei hakavod v'habe'er, the ananei hakavod were taken away and the water was taken away. But later on they were returned, but not in the merit of its previous, in the case of Aaron and Miriam. Instead, all three were b'zchus shel Moshe. He continues that because the idea of Torah is chachma, kakasav, as the pasuk says, kihi chachmaschem u'minaschem le'nei ha'amim, that the Torah is the wisdom, our understanding from amongst the nations. Ein hi nikras b'shem chachma ki im b'shem Torah. Even though that the Torah is called chachma, ki chachmaschem u'minaschem, the Torah is called with the word Torah, miloshen hayra, that it's a guide. The Torah is called the Torah because it serves as a guide, not only for us to know what happened in the case of when the Yidden were in the Midbar, but to guide us in our day-to-day lives wherever we find ourselves. Not only the mitzvahs in the Torah that we're meant to practice, to know what to do, mitzvahs aseh, mitzvahs leisas are the things that we must do or refrain from doing. Mashmos hayra b'chayim, this that it's meant to be a guide in our lives. Ki gam sipurei haTorah mishamshim hayra b'chayim, the stories of the Torah also teach us, also are meant to go along with us. Harigam mitzvahs atzmam le'nichtavu b'derech tzivur, ki b'derech sipur. The mitzvahs themselves are not always written as a commandment, but sewn into the story. The story goes that Hashem tells Moshe, and Moshe tells it to us. And just as the mitzvahs serve as a guide for our lives, even though they're written in a way of a story, so too the stories itself in the Torah serve as a guide, because the stories are part of the Torah. It isn't that there are parts of the Torah that are eternal, parts of the Torah that are meant to guide us, and the other parts are just lead-ins or summaries of a story. Rather, every part of the Torah is meant to serve as a guide for us in our Chayei Yom Yom, in our day-to-day lives. Lefichach Chaysav Rambam, therefore the Rambam writes, and this is hinted in the Gemara as well, She'ein hevdo ben apasuk, v'chayis leitan timna leben apasuk Shema Yisrael. There's no difference in the content of the pasuk that's telling us the liturgy of a specific family to the pasuk that says Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Limreisha pasuk Shema v'goymer koil l'asachas hamitzvos ha'ikris v'lo pasuk v'achos v'goymer ein ela sipur. Even though the pasuk Shema Yisrael has within it the core, the tenet of our faith, and the other one just is a part of a story telling us of a family. Sheken shneim em sipurim, both of them are a story. Shneim mishamshim hayra, shneim ahavim chachmasei ritzoni yisbarach. Both of them embody the will of Hashem. Both of them embody a theme which we can find meaning in those psukim to guide us in our day-to-day lives. And now we come back to Parshas Chukas. Just as every story in the Torah serves as a guide, so too the stories that we're talking about here serve as a guide in our lives. And now the story which we said that the Anani HaKavod were b'schus Aaron, and the well, the Be'er Shel Miriam, the well was b'schus of Miriam, and the man was b'schus of Moshe. Shloisha pratam elu, these three details, Anani HaKavod, the clouds of shelter, of clouds of glory, the man, the manna which sustains us, and the mayim, nisanim la'avanim nimtzas b'chinasam b'Torah. We could see the way we look at these three things as different ideas in the Torah. In Anani HaKavod higinu mibachutz. The Anani HaKavod, the clouds of glory, the clouds of protection, shielded us from afar, from outside. Higinu me'ar ba'aruchos, it sheltered us from all angles. Hargu es anachashim shahib b'midbar, they killed the animals, the scorpions the snakes that could have caused us problems while we were traveling in the desert. Hinmichu es aharim, they lowered the topography for us to be able to walk easily. Giatzu es alavushin, they made sure that the things we had stayed, endured, didn't get ruined. Kakasu simlas chalebel samei alecha kol elu advarim shel shmira v'agana mibachutz. So the Anani HaKavod's role was to protect the Yidden from us, make sure nothing negative comes in, make sure that our walk is smoother, make sure our garments don't get ruined. But these are all external things to us. In Yanishal Manu, contrast that with the man, which is achila, something you consume. And regarding the man, the Gemara in Yuma brings down that you were able to adapt it to have any flavor, any taste that the person was looking for. The idea of eating is something which grasps you from the inside. So the Anani HaKavod shelters from the outside. The man is something which you ingest, which you have inside. Now, when you talk about the well, which we attribute to Miriam, that's the water. Mayim einam davar amazing k'shalatzma. Water is not something that sustains the person. Water on its own is not able to sustain the person, but what water does do is it distributes the food that a person consumes to every part of the body to make sure the person is all around healthy. And just as you have this external idea of the Anani HaKavod, the internal ingestion of the achila of the man, and the water which distributes the internal food all around the body, those three ideas exist in Torah as well. There's a way that the Torah is something which a person internalizes. There's the Torah, there's the way the Torah is within me, there's the way the Torah shelters me, and then there's the way the Torah is dispersed, which we're going to get into in a few minutes, the idea that we compare to the Be'er Shel Miriam. In Ois Gimel we continue, who's really ill? We explained earlier, that Torah is from the word Hayra. Kiloimar, Shahatorah Milamedes, Hanhagois B'chayayim. The Torah gives us pieces, direction of how we should live our day-to-day lives. That is the component of Torah, the way it goes within us, like the man. Just as the man it becomes part of us by being ingested within us, same there's the idea of Torah as well. We have to understand it, we have to grasp it. You have to take the Torah in to know how I'm meant to live, how I'm meant to conduct myself, how my family's meant to conduct themselves. This component of Torah is most similar to the man. Kayamim havdelim ben Yehudi echad l're'ehu. There are differences between every Yid. We're not the same. The fact that the Torah is, I'm able to internalize it, by definition, it means that it's custom to each one of us. Each one of us are different. Just as by the man, there were different levels of how it presented itself and how each person ingested it. By tzaddikim, the food was prepared. By the Rishayim, they had to work the food, they had to work the substance that came down until it was something that they were able to eat or enjoy. So that's the way it is. That's the way it is by the man. By Anani Akavidu Be'er, when you're talking about the Anani Akavai, the shielding clouds of glory and the water, there weren't differences. Water is water. And the cloud that shields you is one cloud for everybody. Only by the man. Because man is the only thing that the person took in, became part of him. So too, we say the same idea as b'Torah. יש כאלו שבאים אפשר יצחרס יוצאים מידי חייבס מצווה תלמוד תורה בקריאה שמע. ויש כאלו שחייבס תלמוד תורה מוטלת עליהם היא דווקא כל היום. There are some people that the way they fulfill the study of Torah is by saying Shema Yisrael. They're announcing the pasuk Shema Yisrael from the Torah, and with that they accomplish the obligation to study Torah. There are others that the obligation, in order for them to fulfill the obligation of studying Torah, they must study V'agisa b'yom v'layla, day and night. Similar to the man, where some people took in this amount and others took in a different amount. Hu hadavar gam b'yachad lihiduri mitzvah. This is a similar idea when you talk about the details when it comes to a person observing a mitzvah. V'af yaser mekain, even more than that. Yeshnam hidurim shemi she'egiya l'darga masima chayev b'hem. There are certain intricacies in a mitzvah where a person that's holding at a higher level is obligated to do all of the hidurim, all of the levels of the mitzvah, while there's other people that are not at that level that's forbidden to do it. It looks like they're flaunting something which they're not. Stam adam asur lasis kain. A regular person is not allowed to do this. Vilu adam chashuv chayav lasis, but an honorable person is obligated to do it. V'im lav yesh bedavar mishum chilul Hashem chas v'shalom. A person that's of a certain stature is obligated to fulfill the mitzvah with certain intricacies, while other people that are at a lower level are not allowed to. You see this idea. This is similar to the man, where it's different by every person. That's one level of Torah. There's another dimension of Torah. So we just finished discussing the level of Torah, the way it's similar to the man. The way it's similar to the man, every Yid is different. Both in quantity and quality, both in echus and kamus. There are those that need to learn Torah the whole day. There are those that fulfill the obligation with learning less. Then when it comes to mitzvahs, there are those that have the chiyuv, the obligation to fulfill the mitzvah with every hidur, and there are others that not only don't have the obligation, but are not supposed to. That's the way the Torah is in the level of man. He continues, in Yenosef Yesh B'Torah, there's another level of Torah, Shabayu Devil Anani Akavid, which at that level it's similar to the Anani Akavid, the clouds of glory. B'kachshu Megan B'Bachutz, there's a way that Torah doesn't become part of me, but shields me from around. When it comes a time of a person to go out to the midbar, we don't live in a desert, but there's an idea of going out to the desert. What does it mean? It refers to when we go out to the desert, which means to the world that is fraught with klipos and sitra achra, with negativity. Midbar gadol v'neira asher ein bei mayim. This awesome midbar that does not have water. Ki'im klipos. It has negative things. Nachash, saraf akrav. It has snakes, scorpions. So over here, the Torah megin azalav koyach mesirus hanefesh atavu l'cholach miYisrael. What shields the person in the environment, in the worldly environment he finds himself in, is the power, the ability of Mesiras Nefesh, which is part of every person, B'chol B'nai Yisrael, which is incorporated into every single Yid. Mishum She Yisrael, Rashi Teves, Yei Shishim Ribi Yisis LaTorah. The word Yisrael, the name that we are referred to, is an acronym for 5 words. Yesh Shishim Ribi Yisis LaTorah. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. The number is not, doesn't, if you count it, there's a formula of how you get to that number. But the idea of Yesh Shishim Ribi Yisis LaTorah, that the Torah protects the Yid. Varei Kashrusei Shel Sefer Torah. The kashrus, the authenticity of the Sefer Torah, ba'ach v'rak, ha'idei kol es Yosef. What makes the Sefer Torah kosher is not that it has most of the letters, not that it has all of the letters, but b'doichik, it needs every single one. U'lefichach yesh l'chol Yehudi, and similarly, every single Yid, af l'kal shebekalim, even to a person that is thought of as a level of kal shebekalim, which is the lightest, the least, what one would think of as the least strongest Yid, even that person has koyach Mesiras Nefesh, the power of Mesiras Nefesh, limsar nafshi al kedushas Hashem, to give up their life, to give up their soul al kedushas Hashem. This idea of Torah, where it shields us, where it protects us in a worldly environment, is similar to the idea of the Ananei HaKavod that shielded the Yidden in the Midbar. This is the clouds of glory component of the Torah. Just as the clouds of glory, the clouds of protection, protected all of the Yidden while they were traveling. From the moment of Kriyas Yamsuf, when they emerge from the Kriyas Yamsuf, until they enter into Eretz Yisrael, we have to appreciate this. There were people that left Mitzrayim that took along with them things that were contrary to what Hashem wanted. Yet, they were shielded, they were protected with the same clouds of glory that Moshe, Aaron, Miriam, and everybody else was. Kach yesh gam chelik b'Torah. הפרט של יש 60 ריבי עשס לתורה, שהוא כולל אז כל בני ישראל למין הגודל שבגדול ומעד הפחד שבכחוסים. ומייניק להם כוח ותקף לעבר את המדבר הגודל והנוירה, בלי להשרשם מן החושים, שרופים והקרבים, ולכרס בהלך רוח של מסירת נפש. Just as when the Yidden left Mitzrayim, the Ananei HaKavod protected all of the Yidden, even those that were actively rebelling against Moshe, actively rebelling against what Hashem just told them by Matan Torah, yet they were shielded by the Torah. The Torah afforded them that shield and protected them during their travels. So too the Torah today, in its Ananei HaKavod role, protects and incorporates the idea of Mesiras Nefesh to every single Yid as we live our lives amongst the tumult of the world that is fraught with klipa, sitra achra, with a lot of negativity. The Torah shields and protects, just as the Ananei HaKavod protect from the snakes, the physical snakes and scorpions that were in the desert. The Torah today shields all of the Yidden from outside forces that seek to do them harm, and allows for the koyach HaMesiras Nefesh to be active amongst all Yidden. As the Frierdiker Rebbe said the following story, Al Tkufas Hispatzus Bevarsha, Kishekulam Chipshu Derech Listater. Pam Hizdamna Lamaka Michsa Echad Kfutza שהקילה את הרבי, אנשים בינוניים, אנשים פשוטים, וכאלו שתחילה חשבו עליהם שאין להם כל זיקו ליהדוס. אך כשבמרחק מועט משם, הספייטסה, כולם קראו פה אחד שמע ישראל. When the story goes that when the Frierdiker Rebbe was in Varsha, in Warsaw, and they were trying to escape from the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, and they ended up with a group of people that on the surface seemed of those of a caliber that were not so involved in Torah and mitzvahs. Yet, when there was an explosion next door or very close by, in unison, all of the Yidden cried out Shema Yisrael at the same time. Because this idea of Torah that gives them the power of Mesiras Nefesh was something that exists by every Yid, similar to the Anani Akaveh that shielded every Yid in the Midbar. כשמגיעים ליחידה שבנפש לעצם הנשמה, אמנם קשה להגיע אליה, אך כשמגיעים אליה, אם בדרך דוגמס האמורה היא בדרכי נוים, משמיע גם הקהל שבקהלם קריאה שמע ישראל, באיזה תוקף כשל מנהיג ישראל. It is difficult to get to that core of the Yid that on the surface is not conducting his or herself in the noble way which you think a person should be behaving. However, when that moment comes, as it came in the story of the Likkutei Rebbe there, in unison they cried out Shema Yisrael, but not only did they cry out Shema Yisrael, but the power of their Shema Yisrael was equal to the power of the Shema Yisrael of the Likkutei Rebbe himself. אך אם יתקן שסיבס הקריאה שמע ישראל אז הייתה בהשפעה סיים ביצועים בדעת המייסר של בעל נשמה כלליס שהם מהווים פרטים שלו אך סיבה זו ערס היחידה שלהם וקריאה שמע ישראל נבע מן היחידה שלהם עצמם. The Rebbe does say true, one of the things that elicited the Shema Yisrael from them is that they were in the presence of the Likkutei Rebbe at the time. However, the Rebbe clarifies that what the Likkutei Rebbe did was allowed for their very own Yechidah Shebenefesh to cry out Shema Yisrael. So to summarize, we discussed how Torah is man. It sustains us, and on that level, each person is different. Some need more, some need less, some have to do it a certain way, some don't. Then there's the Torah the way it is. It shields us. It protects us in the environment of this world. And on that level, everybody is equal, just as the Anani HaKaved in the Midbar was equal for everybody. Even those that were not following the right path, the Anani HaKaved still shielded them. And similar today, even those that are not, the terminology is Kal Shabakalim or Pachas Shabakhusim. The idea is somebody that's a much lower caliber. The Torah still shields them and affords them the ability to bring out their koyach hamesiras nefesh, their commitment to Hashem. What was the third one we spoke about? Was Be'er Shel Miriam. He says, he continues, in order that every Yid should have the man component of the Torah and the Anani HaKaved component of the Torah, we need to incorporate one more ingredient, which is the water of the Torah. Just as the water flows from a higher place to a lower place, so too the Torah descended from a very lofty place down here. It is a beautiful chachma, but in a vessel that has blemishes on it. And because of the Torah descending down here, it allows for every Yid just by uttering the words of Torah, even if you don't know the interpretations of those words, the translations of those words, and also learning ideas of Torah that are not from the Chamishei Chumshei Torah, not from the Torah itself, but from all of the Torah that follow, the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Halacha, Chassidus. If a person focuses on these ideas of Torah, they're able to bring out to the forefront, to, as we said earlier, to distribute the idea of the man throughout the person's being, and with the idea of the Anani HaKaved as well. Just as the water distributes the food to all parts of a person's body, so too the water idea of the Torah, this idea that the Torah descended from such a lofty place down here, Yisrael, the water allows for the Torah that comes down here to go, to be distributed to each person, to him or her, that are in each part of their lives. Earlier on, we brought down the idea that the man was attributed to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Anani HaKavod was to Aaron HaKohen, and the Be'er, the water, is to Miriam. And with that he continues. Kach yuvan HaKesher ben Aman lebein Moshe, ben Anani HaKavod lebein Aaron, lebein Be'er lebein Miriam. And over here we can appreciate the connection between the man to Moshe, the clouds of glory to Aaron, and the water to Miriam. Moshe haya roya Yisrael. Moshe was the shepherd of the Yidden. Vehezin es kol echad lefi erkai, and he nurtured each Yid at their level. Kefisha mesuper, as we were told, Shabishah sharas atzoynu heichel es haktanim b'mira rach v'es hakdoilim b'mira kasha. Sharei mira hu inyin shal pnimis v'tzarech lachein liyais musam lefi dargase shal kol echad. Lefi chachaya amon shahaya b'pnimis b'yischalkusai b'schusay shal Moshe. We're told that Moshe Rabbeinu, as a shepherd of sheep, would make sure that the softer material foods would go to the more delicate sheep, and the rougher materials would go to the older ones. Because each one of them, he made sure to cater that the right sustenance is ingested by the right animal. And so too by Moshe, as being the Roya Neman Shal Yisrael, made sure that the Torah, the idea of the Torah, which we compare to man, is something that's distributed to each Yid on their level. So we see the correlation between Moshe being a Roya, being a shepherd, to the idea of the Torah being synonymous with Moshe Rabbeinu. And the man component of the Torah synonymous with Moshe Rabbeinu. Aaron, who oyev kesabriyes. Aaron loves everybody. Koloimar, who oyev games elu she'enim el abriyes. Aaron loved everybody, even those that the only accolade you could say about the person is that he's a creation. And therefore on Aaron it is said, Vayivku es Aaron shleishim yoim kol beis Yisrael. Everybody mourned Aaron for 30 days. Davar shlei nemer legabe acherim. A description that is not said about anybody else. Because of his love for every Yid, he awakened within them the desire to do mitzvahs. He imposed it onto them because they were not holding at that level. And therefore, just as the man, which is an internal custom idea, is attributed to Moshe, the Anani HaKavod, which is includes everybody, is attributed to Aaron and came in his merit. Because this attributing the Anani HaKavod to Aaron is a midah keneged midah because of the way he lived his life. And because he loved every being without exception, him shichas Anani HaKavod sheikifos kol bnei Yisrael b'midah shava. Therefore, he drew down the Anani HaKavod, which shielded everybody. You see the beauty between the Moshe Rabbeinu and the man, and Aaron and Anani HaKavod. Miriam harehi pua. Miriam is pua. Zu shehismasra legidul atinekes b'Mitzrayim. Shifra and Pua, they gave themselves over to bring up the children in Mitzrayim, the babies in Mitzrayim during the decree. Lama nikra shma Miriam. So if her name is Pua, why is she called Miriam? Lefisha oisa bizman hamar shal koshi hagolos, because she was during the bitter times of Golos. V'im zois, and even though it was during a difficult time, Hishmias nebuasa sha'asi bikarev livalid Meshiach shal Yisrael. She knew, she heard that soon there will be born the Redeemer of the Yidden. V'idekach bitla leirakas gzeras parei, and because of her conduct, not only was the gezerah of parei, which was kol haben hayiloi dayoret hashluchu, every child that's born should be, every male, every boy should be thrown into the Nile. Not only did she avert that, kim gam es gzeras Amram. She's the one that said you have to have another child. Limrei shahaya la'amram nimuk l'gzeirasai. Miriam pala b'mesiras nefesh la'achin es yaladim sheyemru zeh keli vanvei. It was Miriam that by Kriyas Yamsuf led the singing of zeh keli vanvei. This is Hashem. Darish yikabalas HaTorah, the generation which will receive the Torah. B'schus haya is in her merit eifah be'er mayim. And therefore in her merit we have the water. What does the water symbolize? Sha'inyanam shamayim hu avas v'anchasas ha'torah l'makim namoch gam le'elu she'heim b'ktei ha'machra. Water allows to flow from a higher place to a lower place, or in the case of a body, water distributes the man throughout the body, even to the lowliest of places. Miriam, in her conduct, made sure that the Yidden, that Moshe is born, will make sure that Paro's decree doesn't happen, and also make sure that the Torah, that in her case, that everybody was sustained.
Interesting, it's not media connected media.
Everybody, okay, good point. Everybody was sustained, but in the case of the analogy between her conduct and water is that water will flow to everybody, even those that are thought of to be on the fringes. Okay, so we said that there's Miriam to water, Aaron to the Ananei HaKavod, Moshe to the mud. But Ukshistalku Aaron and Miriam, when Aaron and Miriam passed away, Nistalku Ananei HaKavod Rabbeir, the Ananei HaKavod left and the water and the well stopped. Then v'chazru b'schus shel Moshe, they returned in the merit of Moshe. From this we are forced to say Moshe echel ba'avodah chadasha. Moshe started this new avodah. Because Moshe, the old Moshe that we know, was a man type of Moshe, the Roya Neman, custom to each Yid. He returned the clouds and the water. And with this he concludes. A true sign of a leader of the Yidden who who mitzaded et atzmoi, mazniach es atzmoi, u'moiser nafshel l'man bnei Yisrael. A true leader doesn't say, I'm good at this, but and everything else goes by the wayside. When Aaron was nifter, when Miriam was nifter, when they both passed away, Moshe ventures into places that are outside of what he normally was for the sake of the Yidden at that time. B'shah shel tzorech lekarev libam shel Yisrael, at a time of need to bring the Yidden closer, v'gam shel pachasha b'chusim, and also to those at a very lowly level, alikus, maniach raya Yisrael es inyanav u'malamed es b'nei Yisrael, aleph beis. The Moshe Rabbeinu goes and deals with the person at the lowliest of levels. Whether it be the fundamentals of Torah and mitzvahs, or literally the letters Aleph and Beis. אבל אין מעניוני לובה למאגים אנשים שאינם כשרים, למלאס כל זויס, הרי בשעה שנסתלקו אהרון ומרים, ואין מי שיטפל בדבר, פוינה ראש ישראל, להסעסיק בעניינים אלו, גם כשאין הדבר לפי ערכו. One would say, Moshe Rabbeinu, what are you doing? Don't deal with people at a lower level, it's beneath you. Or don't teach people to teach others, which in a regular time, that's the right way to go. But when Aaron is not there and Miriam's not there, Moshe gets involved to be the Aaron of the moment. Moshe gets involved to be the Miriam of the moment. That's a true leader. A true leader knows that they have the koyach to do things outside of their normal yechelos and incorporate it into their leadership. Now, Betanya, in Perek Mem Beis in Tanya, it says, "Sheyesh l'chol ish Yisrael nitzut shel Moshe Rabbeinu." It says in Tanya that every year there's a little bit of Moshe within them. So this leads us to a takeaway for all of us, not just for what Moshe Rabbeinu did when Aaron and Miriam were nifter, but this is a takeaway for us. Every yid has his calling. When you find yourself in a place where the Miriam is not there, the Aaron is not there, but there exists the actual danger of snakes and scorpions in the case of things to protect the Yidden. You, the responsibility for you to be the one who returns the water, you to be the one that serves as the Anani HaKavod, Mibli Lahari Madavar Mitafkidi Eloi, without saying, is this my calling? Gam Kazek Shel Atzmai Ein Loi Lachshesh Klal Nachashim Sof Makravi, Mishum Sheyesh Leitzam Alakim. Even if the person himself, I'm protected, I'm shielded, I have my own Anani HaKavod, because I'm at a higher level, a person could conclude. Therefore, I won't be impacted by what's going on. In the Gemara it says a wild animal cannot control a person. The only way an animal could harm you is if the animal thinks you're an animal. Because to others there exists a sakana, and they don't seem to be in the environment where they're already shielded. At that moment, that's a moment of pikuach nefesh. Which, regarding such a person at that time, you would desecrate the Shabbos. It pushes away the whole Torah. Even if there's multiple, maybe not, in this story, even if it's for a short period of life. You have to be the one that worries about the person. You have to serve the role of the Moshe, you have to serve the role of the Aaron, and you have to serve the role of the Miriam in your micro situation. And when a person allows for this to happen, or do I have a higher calling and I shouldn't dabble or waste my time in something so lowly? And will bring these Yidden closer. If Hashem sees that you're worrying about somebody else, Hashem will bring you and your family closer. Hashem will give them what is needed for them. And here's the closing idea. Mitzvah hamutelas rak al hatzibur anashim v'nashim she'aziyeh v'shachanti b'seichem b'seich kol echad v'echad miYisrael. The culmination will be the asuli mikdash, you make the dwelling place, and in this case it will be the communal one where we'll experience the v'shachanti b'seichem b'seich kol echad v'echad miYisrael within every single yid. To summarize, in Parshas Chukas, it brings down the idea that the Anani HaKavod that shielded the Yidden were in the Sichos of Aaron. The water, the bear was in the Sichos of Miriam. And the man is in the Sichos of Moshe. Each one of those are because of the lives that they lived. Moshe was the Roya Neman, was the shepherd that catered to every Yid individually, and that symbolizes the idea of Torah, the way it's different for every Yid. Torah is not different for every Yid, but the way it's applied to every Yid is different. The amount of a person, the obligation of how much a person needs to study Torah is different. Moshe Rabbeinu was that Roya Neman that saw the individuality of every Yid. Aaron was Oyev Es Abriyos. He saw every Yid as part of this fold in a equal way. And therefore the Anani HaKavod that shielded the Yidden were b'schus of Aaron, Mida Keneged Mida, because this is the way Aaron was. Miriam sought to in the case of when Miriam was in Mitzrayim, in Miriam is Pua, sought to bring the Yidden, the babies into the world to avert the Gzeira of Parai and even the Gzeira of Amram. All of this to bring this next generation in to say Zekei Livan Veyu. They appreciated the glory of Hashem by Kriyas Yamsuf in the time that followed. So we see the connection between Moshe and the Man, Aaron and the Anani HaKavod, and Miriam and the Be'er. But the Rebbe says that there's a part of Moshe in each one of us. And that part that exists within each one of us is something that we have to see to make the Torah part of us individually. We each have our unique calling. And what our calling is, or how we make the impact in ourselves, in our family, in our surroundings, we have to appreciate what our strengths are. But just as when the Yidden were in the Midbar, and when Aaron HaKohen passed away and Miriam passed away, the bear ended, and the Anani HaKavod ended, and they were brought back by Moshe. Why were they brought back by Moshe? Because Moshe Rabbeinu knew that they were necessary. And if they were necessary, even though it was outside of his general sphere of influence, he was the only one that could do it at the moment, and therefore he brought them back. there's an important lesson for us as well. We could see our calling. We each know our respective strengths and weaknesses. And a person could come at any given moment and say, this is not my calling, so I'm not going to get involved in it. Or that person is not on my list of responsibilities, so I'm not going to invite that person. Just as Moshe Rabbeinu, when the moment was there that he had to be the Aaron, he had to be the Miriam, he had to bring back the Ananei HaKavod, he had to bring back the Be'er Shel Miriam. The lesson for us is, when necessary, not to absolve ourselves of things that we think are not our responsibility or not our calling. When we know that there's nobody else to do it at this moment, we should extend ourselves for another Yid. Whether it be another Yid that needs help in Torah, another Yid that needs help in mitzvahs, a Yid that needs the Ahavas Yisrael from you. If you encounter that person now, it means it's your responsibility to extend yourself to them, and the culmination of this, of extending yourself to one another, is the ultimate idea that began with Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, and that is to bring out the V'asuli Mikdash, to bring out, to fulfill what Hashem wants in this world from us, but from the world in general. That is V'asuli Mikdash, to make from me a dwelling place in the entire world, in the lowliest places of this world. And Hashem says, if you do V'asuli Mikdash, then V'shachanti b'soicham, I will dwell in it, b'soich kol echad v'echad, within each and every person. If each one of us make our Mikdash Ma'at, in Mirz Hashem soon, we will be Zoicha to the ultimate of V'asuli Mikdash V'shachanti B'seichem, that being in the third Beis HaMikdash, the eternal Beis HaMikdash, with the coming of Mashiach. May we merit that time. B'mheira v'yameinu. Amen.